Hello, everybody. Jan Rutherford here with Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for joining us today. And I have been looking forward to this interview for so long. We're going to talk about this phenomenal book that Tom Cilio and Beau Wise wrote. Through the Leadership podcast, I've helped interview over 240 people over the past 5 years. And this book, I can't recommend highly enough. It speaks to your heart. It speaks to your heart, and it's a phenomenal book. So, without any further ado, let me bring on Beau Wise and Tom
Hey,
Cilio.
Jan.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today, and congratulations on writing.
Hey, thank you for
as I
having us.
said, a terrific book. So I've worked hard at some questions here. First, I want to start off with a really hard question to you, Beau. So not only did you say you're a drummer, but you used the word that resonated with me. You said you were a percussionist. So were you a band geek? Were you a band
Oh
geek?
yeah, high school, especially high school and college, I was a band geek, and in college it was, I high school was just drums, and that was fun. College is where you have to go tonal instruments and like piano and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm tone deaf. That's why I picked drums.
Well, another story, but the whole reason part of the reason I ended up in the Army is my first thing is I tried out for the Army band as a drummer, percussionist.
Oh wow,
And
awesome.
yeah, and ended up becoming a Green Beret, which is a crazy path. But so, and that's funny though, because of all the guests we've had on the Leadership podcast, very successful thought leaders, it is amazing how many people are musicians and how many play guitar, like your brothers. So there's something to that. And Tom, do you have any hidden talents I don't know about?
No, my sister Lauren Saleo is a world-class flutist, so that's as close as it gets for me. So.
Oh wow, well that's pretty good. Wow, that's incredible. Well, let me ask you. Let me start out with Tom. Let me ask you kind of an author-to-author question. Who is this book for?
Great question. Thanks for having us on, Jan, and thank you for your service as well.
Oh, you're welcome.
This book is for not just the Wise family, but for all Gold Star families and veterans. That was very important to Beau and certainly to me as well. Our very first conversation that we ever had when I flew to Oklahoma to first meet Beau, we both agreed on that immediately. And over the past 2+ years, I don't think we've ever strayed from that path. And I hope that's evident in the book.
Yeah. I had a feeling you were going to answer that way. And, as I read it, the way it hit me was Gold Star families, they already know all this, and I know they will appreciate it. And I thought, the people that need to read this are the 99% that have nothing to do with the military. Because I think you captured the essence of what it means to be a military family. So again, kudos to you. Let me ask. Let me go to both of you and start with Beau. As you look at this book, Beau, what do you think this story that you told is really about?
There's a lot of different things. We said a lot of different things, and some of the things that the notes were emotional release. It was a cathartic process, and just things that been heavy on my heart and my mind that I couldn't say for years. And it's as much as when we started getting into it, we had this idea of just preserving Jeremy and Ben's legacy. But one of the things that I said first and foremost, and Tom was completely on board with it right away. I think we just synced up. And I said, I want Jeremy and Ben's, not just the last actions in their death, but their life, the goal for preservation of life, de oppresso liber, free the oppressed. I mean, I think that was one of the drawing points for Ben to selection, was just to fight for other people, not just himself. It's not about just pulling the trigger. That's something you do when you have to, and as well as anybody. And but focusing on how they lived and how they died, and their last actions being preservation of life. Sometimes we get, I think, so caught up in the war films, we just think about killing, or we see killing, and we just think that that's war. And what you don't see is a Green Beret, going through the cave networks, calling off airstrike or holding on airstrike or wanting to take a look at something, and then finding women and children and getting them out of harm's way. That's the dimension that people don't see. And that's what Tom and I were trying to focus on with this book, and give aspiring service members, like you said, the other 99% that maybe they're thinking about it or maybe they don't, but at least they can see that dimension, hopefully, in Three Wise Men.
Yeah. What about you, Tom?
I think Beau nailed it right on the head. And when he mentioned de oppresso liber, I mean, I think, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but Ben lived it and died for it. And I can't wait for everyone to read more about what Ben did. It's tough stuff, of course, but it just inspires me so deeply on a daily basis. And I think it's something that every American, not just the 1%, but like you said, Jan, the 99%, can read and learn from and be inspired by.
Yeah. Parts of the book for me, and I think it would be for most people, were tough. I mean, they're tough to get through. And, I appreciate your courage in putting some of those things in, because I know they were tough. But, what I thought the book was about as I read it, and I reflected, and I'm looking at page 11, and, you have this quote in here that says, "I'm sorry, brother. Can you forgive me?" And I thought, I mean, this book is about love, and it's about forgiveness. And part of that forgiveness is, I think what you captured, Beau, was sort of forgiving yourself. So I think that's sort of the unexpected thing, that somebody thinks they're going to read a book about some warriors, and I got that part, but I thought it was much deeper than that. And in the way that you wrote it, really, took you, through your childhood and everything. Was that in the back of your mind, Beau, as you wrote it as well?
Maybe not right away, but this has been a healing process for me, as far as just writing it and saying it, and talking. And I'm so grateful to everyone who's helped support this book. But the real cathartic process, has always been the one crutch when I couldn't talk to my family or this or that, is being able to talk to veterans like you, Jan. So, but as far as the apologetic mentality is, I got trapped in that, and over the years, and even when I couldn't admit that I had survivor's guilt. And there's a lot of veterans that are coming home, might be the only service member in their immediate family. They come home with survivor's guilt. I'm friends with someone, I won't say his name, I'm not really sure he's comfortable with that, but he was one of two guys that survived an IED blast in his vehicle, and the others are gone. And that right there, you can imagine why the roll of the dice, why he should live and they should be gone. And everybody's circumstances is their own, but you're absolutely right. That emotionally, there was a lot of things that I wanted to say to Jeremy when he called to, from fob to fob, or patrol base, when he was in Coast Province, Christmas time frame 2009, and which was just, of course, a week before we would lose him. As far as I know, I was going to talk to him again soon, and then that ended up being the last conversation, and being able to just say whatever it is you want to say between family members to get something off your chest, and, not live with regrets. And Jeremy and Ben didn't live a life of regret. They lived a life of fulfillment. And so sharing that part of it was very tough, but it was,
Yeah.
like you said, a very cathartic process for me.
Yeah. Well, again, I applaud your courage in stepping forward and speaking on behalf of a lot of people that are dealing with things. I'm kind of curious. In particular, I really enjoyed, talking about, what it was like, as brothers, as little kids. I never had a brother, so I really enjoyed that. And one of the things that you framed, and let me ask you, start with you, Tom. Um, you really outlined some of the setbacks that all the brothers had. Some of the failures where they quit at different points in their life and how they dealt with that. What did you learn, from kind of reviewing, those setbacks? What did you learn from that?
Well, I learned to never give up, and that just because one goal doesn't work out, doesn't go your way, there's still so many more amazing things you can accomplish if you pick yourself up. I think Jeremy is a great example of that. You mentioned how he had some setbacks in terms of starting out at West Point, and then he didn't finish, and that was something that gnawed at him for many, many years. After the fact, he talks about it with Beau. I think exact words were, I'll always be a quitter and I'll never get past this. I'm paraphrasing, but then look what Jeremy did. He graduated from college. He went to medical school, was in his final year when 9/11 occurred, and was still thinking about, going to BUDS or Navy SEAL training, as most listeners probably know. And took the brave, that was his chance. That was his big chance to atone in his mind for West Point. And after 9/11, as Beau would say, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Jeremy left medical school despite so much he had already accomplished and went straight in to BUDS training, and he made it through. And he even had some setbacks in BUDS, but he made it through there as well. So what an incredible story of resilience. And that's just Jeremy. Of course, there are many examples with Ben and Beau and family members and the other young men and women that they serve with. So never quit.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would take away from it.
Wow. And what about, thanks, Tom. What about you, Beau? What did you, as you reflected back on some of their setbacks in your own, what did you learn from all that?
Well,
Something similar?
Yeah, I always had a very unique advantage, like having all of these experiences taught to me prior to enlisting. So I tried to take as much with me as I could, even when I was being, stubborn. And there's I think one passage where and everybody goes through this phase where the Army infantry, Marine Corps infantry, combat arms, period. I think, this the whole invincible mentality, just young and bulletproof, and I had to get set straight. Like, dude, you better knock that. That's great when you're yelling cadence on a run, but when you get down range, you're not invincible. And so that you know you can either learn the easy way or the hard way. And and once the run is over, the cadence is over, the hype is over, you get down to the classes and you start figuring out just how to survive and how to keep yourself and your buddies alive. But yeah, having them go prior to was kind of my education that prepared me so that I hopefully didn't make those mistakes.
Yeah, it was interesting, as you go through, those setbacks and you describe it in the conversations between the brothers, it seemed like there was always something that kept you all centered. You all came back to how you were raised by your parents and your values and your faith and different things. Was that something that at different points along the way, did you lose that? And then you had to find your way back, or was it always there as an anchor?
Jeremy, I lived with Jeremy in Virginia Beach, and brothers living together, we got into it a couple times, but we always found a way to resolve it. And it was it's something that lingered with me. And despite the fact that we apologized to each other and I didn't even feel that he really needed to apologize to me, but he just felt he wanted to do it. And so we did. And, for Jeremy, it was, hey, water under the bridge, man. Whatever. That was, almost a year ago. Don't worry about it. And, but, when you have that, and even when you do, get that closure, and then they're gone, sometimes it can linger, and it did for me. So it was a little
Yeah.
piece that I struggled with, but we always managed to stay connected. And no
Yeah.
matter what happened, as they knew I was approaching, they stayed in touch with me out of fear because they had been through that young invincible phase, on the first deployment. So it's constantly getting emails, and they like, okay, the Marines are in Helmand Province primarily, a few in Kandahar, a few in here. Here's the demographic on Pashtuns and all this stuff, and just big brother concerns. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Our core values just kind of kept us, close.
Yeah. And another question I've got for you, Beau, and I want to hear from Tom as well. Same question is, I always tell people, writing an article or a blog is relatively easy. You sit down, you kind of crank it out. Putting a book together is really hard work to figure out how you're going to thread it all together and have it make sense. And you spend hours, and you rewrite and you relive. As you went through this whole process, Beau, what did you learn about yourself?
Well, I learned that I had a co-author that can function with severe sleep deprivation. I'll tell you that. And I know that he put a lot into this, and for the most part, I was just kind of networking for him, connecting him with Green Berets and Navy SEALs. But at the same point in time, once I did connect with him, guys that I hadn't talked to in a few years, and some of the information would start to come to me as well, just reminiscent, been playing games with him and getting on the PA over the airfield and making fun of one of his buddies and getting in trouble for it by the sergeant major or the brass or whatever, that little stuff. And, just a lot of different things. But sorry, I kind of lost focus of the question. What was it?
No, that's okay. It was about, what you've learned. I mean, writing the book, did it change the trajectory of what you're going to do and in the path you're on with your own life and career?
Everything I would say kind of synced up with our goals. Everything that we had. I mean, I wanted to prove that Jeremy and Ben were the highest caliber of patriot, and everything just Tom will tell you, the more we talked, the more we found, and the more we were like, this is awesome. And as cathartic as it was, and as painful as it was at times, but I learned that Jeremy and probably Ben to a certain extent downplayed their deployments. So the kinetic nature of what they were doing downrange was, they both lived the kind of silent professional, as cocky as Jeremy was, and Jeremy was very cocky. But as far as what he did, it was all about what he could do. He was cocky about, I'll go to hell. Me and my brothers will go to hell. We don't care. But as far as the things that had already been done, that wasn't important. You know what I mean? So like when Tom found out like the frequency of firefights, how many they were getting into, and the contact, and how kinetic the deployments were, Tom would tell me like, "Hey, did you know this, and this?" And I'm, nope, didn't know. So, and having that, being able to connect with those little things, and knowing that everything that I believed from the get go, that they were the highest class of heroes, and in my opinion, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah, they were protecting you.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Tom, how about you? I mean, you've written more than a few books. What did you learn about yourself writing this one?
Well, in terms of myself, I learned that it reinforced something that's always kind of guided me, which is never make assumptions about grief and how people grieve. And even within, certainly this is true throughout the Gold Star community. I've had the honor of interviewing more than 100 Gold Star family members over this decade. And, but even within Beau's family, I don't think he'd mind me mentioning this, everyone inside his family grieves differently. So, but it also taught me so much about resilience. I had some personal family challenges going on during the time while Beau and I were writing this book. And first person I went to for advice was Beau. And so I guess one thing I learned is that I have a friend for life, and I'll always be so grateful to Beau and for his and to his whole family. I also want to mention his mom, Mary. I mean, you talk about strength. Mrs. Wise is the only mother to lose two sons during the 20-year war in Afghanistan, almost 20-year war in Afghanistan. And to just hear her voice and her drive and her commitment and her faith, whenever I would have doubts about, oh man, I don't think I can delve into this today. It's too heavy. I thought about Mrs. Wise and said, you know what, we're doing this for her, and we're doing this for all the moms out there like her.
Yeah. We're getting some comments and grief and how we grieve, amen to that. People have said grateful for your courage and service. Thanks for sharing. So some good comments coming in. Beau, back to you, from a military perspective, were there any regrets about you, enlisting, or you getting out, or you being anxious to deploy, thinking, gosh, you've got to go prove yourself? I mean, any regrets there?
As far as service, a little bit. Yeah, I eventually had to accept that it was beyond my control. I had settled on a path, and my 20-year goal was to be a Marine gunner, a warrant officer of infantrymen. In my opinion, they're just kind of like the great librarians of the Marine Corps, the masters of warfare. You have, 15 years enlisted. They spend times in multiple facets of the infantry, experts in weapon systems and stuff. So I kind of set out a path, and that I wanted. The next step was SOI, was to go teach guns, my MOS, 0331, RA. And after everything happened, it wasn't until myself and Shane, a fellow Green Beret of Ben's, and then eventually Trevor, a fellow Marine, Green Beret of Ben's, we were escorted Ben's remains home to Dover. And once I got with my family, that was when we found out that there was going to be a series of restrictions on my deployability and what I could do. And, you can't really be a warrant officer of infantrymen if you're a gunner, if you're not in the infantry. So sucks, but life's what happens while you're busy making plans, and just, try to move with it. At the time, I wasn't really concerned about my career, but as time went on, and I was coping with grief, and I eventually started like, how am I going to, accomplish this? So there's always that what if, in the background, where I thought, man, I think I would have been a good gunner. I would have been a good instructor. I love teaching. I love guns, and I love Marines. And I miss the fleet every day, but it is what it is. And, we shift fire. We're working with family, and on our way to being small business owners, and just adjust, and I managed to stay in the Marine Corps for many years and got out March of last year. So regrets, I wouldn't say, because like I said, I know I couldn't control it, but there is always that what if,
Well, you wrote about General Amos, and I thought that was interesting because I could relate to your perspective, and I could relate to his perspective. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? What his role he played?
Well, he was the commandant at the time. He was the chief of staff of the Marine Corps. So when he showed up in Dover, that's when I knew it was serious. But one of the reasons that he was there is, as we were waiting to escort Ben's remains home for the postmortem autopsy, we found out that 6 Marines had been killed in a helo crash in Afghanistan. So they asked, like, hey, would you be guardian angel for the Marines as well? Of course, And so that was one of the reasons that he was in Dover. And but I believe Secretary Panetta is the one that called him and told him about it. And he was like, well, I'm on my way to Dover right now, I think, is how that exchange went down. So, but when he made the call and told my parents that he's not going anywhere for a long time, there's quite a bit of frustration on my end. Now, I'm not just a husband, but I have 2 children as well. I get it. I get it. I
Yeah.
understand. And I'd have probably done the same thing.
Were you were you borderline or absolute insubordinate when he was conveying this information? Because I can just see a
No,
Marine.
yeah, no,
No,
he's
you
still a
were.
commandant. And there was still Sergeant Major Barrett and like several members of the headquarters Marine Corps staff that came in with
Okay.
him. Some of them crying, and
Yeah.
right then and there, I was just thinking about Jeremy and Ben. But as time went along, I slowly started thinking about it, and I was just like, man. And that was part of the fear, was not just after losing Jeremy and Ben. It's like I'm going to lose my brotherhood too. Like I'm going to lose the infantry, but I
Yeah.
didn't completely, and I was allowed to stay, and I was allowed to serve, and it helped me cope because I really don't know how I would have done without my brothers. Because there was a time where I couldn't talk to my wife, I couldn't write a book, and I couldn't do all what we're doing right now. And it's just but having the brotherhood there has kind of helped me along.
Yeah. At one point, and Tom, feel free to jump in here. At one point in the book, you write about Jeremy asked, "What happens when you fail?" And I remember getting asked that question. When I was getting ready to go in. What happens when you fail? Um, what happens when you fail?
Well,
Well, go ahead, Beau.
go ahead, Tom.
No,
No,
please,
go
Beau.
ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, what happens when you fail is it's tough. I've had failures in my career. We've all had failures in school or at home or wherever, whatever we're doing in life. And you know, take a little bit of time and work through it yourself. Talk to the people you trust. Talk to the people you love, and then just start up again, start over again, and keep going. And just find something that you love doing and that's important to you, and go for it at all costs.
Yeah. Well, you said something that's really interesting, Tom, and I see this not just in the military, but with executive teams. They're really good about saying, "Hey, anything I can do, you let me know. I'm there for you."
Mm-hmm.
But and again, not just military, but business world. People are really terrible about basically saying, "Help me. I need help. I don't know." Um, any advice you have for people that might be listening that think they've got to, I got to figure all this out alone. I don't have anybody to turn to, and I don't want to look weak or whatever it might be. Any advice for those folks?
Sure. I'll tell a very quick story. I worked in the media for about 8 years, TV news, and I was frustrated back in late 2009, actually right around the time Jeremy passed away. I was frustrated that there wasn't enough personal stories in the media about Afghanistan and Iraq and the heroes who served there and their families. So, I did some soul searching, and I left a pretty secure, well paying job at a prominent network and started a blog on my own and started telling the stories myself. And there was no one to coach me on that. There was no, in terms of, hey, how do you leave the media and start a blog about something that a lot of people don't think has mass appeal. Interest in the wars was waning at that time, even though I completely disagree with it's a reality. And so I started with my wife. Then I went to some friends that I've known a long time since I was growing up in Northern Virginia, and then just kept branching out and branching out, talking to anyone who would listen. And we figured it out. The blog became a syndicated column, and my first syndicated column became my first book. So it is possible, and there are more people around you than you realize who are willing to help. Sometimes it's someone you don't even really know that well, but just don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to branch out.
Yeah. It's a terrific counsel. And, again, it goes back to that word I used at the beginning. It does require a little bit of courage, because there's some vulnerability when we raise our hand and say, I don't know what to do, or I need some help. Yeah, Bo, one of the things I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, because again, I mean, I saw this book. I knew I had to read it, and I wanted to do my part in making sure that more people knew about the story. Um, what should people know? When if you were going to say, hey, if you wanted to know who my brother Jeremy was and who my brother Ben was, here's what you need to know. I mean, tell us something that really captures the essence of Jeremy. And again, it might be something that you already have in the book, and something that captures the essence of Ben.
Well, Jeremy was, the kind of from an early age, the glue. When Ben and I got closer in size, there a little bit of a rivalry developed. I never had that with Jeremy. He was 10 years my elder and just larger than life. But and there is one scene in the book that I wanted to focus on, and Tom immediately said, "Yeah, we've got to say that." And it was, when Ben and I got in a fight, and I got slammed up against an arm wall, and Jeremy intervened, and Jeremy, I love my brother, but he could be a little bit overbearing, and I thought Jeremy was going to come down on both of us pretty hard, but he identified something really quick that he wanted to put a stop to, and to this day, no idea what he said to Ben, but he pulled Ben aside and came back in and said, "Look, we're old, we're fat, we're bald, and maybe our wives leave us or whatever, and we've got nothing else. We've got brothers, we've got family. We'll have Heather." And things kind of started to change. That was a paradigm shift in my relationship with Ben as a result of what Jeremy said. And he always just kind of found the way to pull that back, and then Ben kind of became that later. And Ben, I think, was pretty tender as an adult, pretty gentle, and despite the fights mentioned in the book, but there's so much more to their character that their personalities that I wanted to say that hadn't been said yet.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job of capturing, the Special Forces Green Berets, and the fact that they're not only warriors, but they're diplomats. And then I think you did a great job capturing the essence of a Special Forces medic, and how much they mean not only to the team, but to the villages in which they work. That there is this,
That would
like
be
you
thanks
just
to
said.
Tom.
Well, there's a tenderness. I mean, to a Green Beret medic. I mean, there has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the way that you described, he was always taking care of the team, always taking care of the team. I thought that to me was striking. Really terrific, really terrific job with the book. And the other thing I'm wondering, in the acknowledgement, you kind of give an update, but I'm just wondering how your mom's doing, and your sister Heather, and how the family's doing, and they must be so proud of you.
Well, thank you. They're doing well. My unfortunately, my mother had a stroke last year, but she's recovering. Just kind of a lot of stress, but she is the toughest you'll ever find, and she's definitely where we get our a lot of our toughness from, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's part of the grieving process. Not everybody could be as involved, and they might have wanted to help, but just emotionally maybe not ready yet. So I try not to push too hard if they weren't ready. And with my mom, tough as she is, I asked her if she wouldn't read it. I just think it'd be a little bit heavy.
Yeah, I can understand. And the other, I don't know if I'm spoiling anything if I ask you this, because I know the answer, but three wise men. One, two. Who's the third? Do you want to talk about the third wise man?
That would be my father, and he was the mentor for all of us, and he was. I know it sounds cliche, but his wisdom was just, you know, scripturally as a growing up in a Christian household and having that faith and everything else. I mean, he was kind of our compass, and a lot of times when Jeremy would correct myself or Ben, he was usually regurgitating something that had been, fed to us early on.
Yeah. Hey, I want to show you guys something. This is a big deal. This is Vice Admiral Mark Mellett. He is the top military officer in all of Ireland. Great webinar.
Oh,
Thanks to Beau and Tom. Can't wait to read.
Wow. Thank you
Mark,
so much.
thank you, sir.
Admiral Mellett is an incredible leader. One of the
Thank you.
yeah,
What an honor. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so
And he's
much.
a Mayo man. He's from the same place we're from in Ireland. His family. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's huge. Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for watching. Well, it's absolutely been an honor to be on with you today. Tom, what would you like the listeners, the people watching this to know, about, was there anything that we didn't talk about that you really want to make sure people know about the Wise family?
Sure. Well, I think the Wise family embodies the sacrifices of this generation of volunteer warriors. Everyone remembers September 11th, 2001, of course, and ever since that day up until this very moment, as we're sitting here, we had an inauguration yesterday, the fourth commander-in-chief since the war in Afghanistan started. So it crosses all party lines, it crosses decades now. And at this very moment, there are men and women in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, all around the world, some countries most people haven't even heard of, and they're quietly doing their duty, quiet professionals, just like Ben and Jeremy were. And I hope this book is a reminder of these decades of sacrifice by an all-volunteer generation and their families as well.
So well said, Tom. Yeah, I think most people would be surprised to know that we have troops in over 60 countries right now. As you said, quietly doing their work, and much of that is humanitarian and diplomatic.
Yep.
Much of it. So thank you, Tom. I mean, you are one heck of a craftsman. What a terrific book. I really can't say enough things about it. It grabs you from the get-go and holds you, and and parts of it tear your gut out. They really do. And I'd be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to a common friend of all of ours, Kevin Flake, who's featured in the book, who is a good friend of Ben, and who has his own story that's terrific. And Kevin has shared some footage with me of some of and it's tough, but part of me thinks not only should people read this, but people should bear witness to some of these sacrifices. And again, I think you did a really great job of not only talking about what happens in a warrior's life, but what it means back home. Mm-hmm. And how hard it is and tough it is on family. And that's where, Beau, you seem to have got there, that it's hard when you're young, like you say, and bulletproof, to kind of understand what you're putting your family through. But when you start having kids and different things, then you start to realize, because when you're there, you're in control, supposedly. Yeah. And when you're sitting over here, you have no control, no information, and everybody's sugarcoating everything. So before we go. So before we go, Beau, last words to you, my friend. What is it that you want to make sure people know?
There's a lot of things. I mean, aside from just trying to honor Jeremy and Ben and preserve their legacy, learn from my failures and successes, and family members, get your veterans to talk. Service members, look left, look right, and keep an eye out for it. The counter IED warfare lingo that we've been using the last 20 years is look for a change in the baseline. When I was, an instructor on this stuff actually in the Marine Corps, and I used to tell my Marines I would use one of my best friends in the Marine Corps, Sergeant Mayberry, and I would say, or Staff Sergeant, I would say, he's neurotic. If he doesn't call me 3 times a day, something's wrong. And the Marines would laugh because they all know him and he is neurotic. But those little things, just keeping an eye out for, and just making sure that our service members stay sharp, spiritually healthy and mentally healthy, and use those facets and dive into your faith and protect yourselves and protect each other.
Yeah. You made me think, Beau, that, we always talk about, one of the responsibilities of citizenship is to be an informed voter. But I think what you've highlighted is one of the responsibilities of us as citizens is not just to say we support the troops, but to understand what that really means, and all those families. So again, gentlemen, thank you so much for writing an exceptional book. Beau, thank you for your service, my friend. And as an Army guy, I will say, Semper Fi.
Hey, thank you, brother, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, again, my honor, and anything I can do to help get the word out, you just let me know.
Will do.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you both for your service. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen.